When you think of intersectional environmentalism, Black Asian solidarity, and ecopreneur, what comes to mind? Well, today's guest is someone that has worked and pioneered solutions and change at the intersection of all three fields. Today's guest is Lorena James, a woman who truly does it all. She's a new friend of mine who is dedicated to the planet and the people in it, and making sure that everyone has a place in the fight for our climate. Lorena, I enjoyed meeting with you and discussing your passion for the environment and sustainability. It is so inspiring and something I hope our listeners can genuinely relate to and build upon. You taught me so much, and I know you will inspire and teach the audience through this episode. Now let's take a listen and unpack Lorena's very interesting, diverse, and intersectional environmental and global international story. Thank you for listening to The Purposeful Professional, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, hello everyone. I'm back for the Purposeful Professional podcast where we talk all about life, careers, purpose, all that good stuff. Today I'm here with Lorena James, and I met Lorena at the Lead Next Fellowship, and plug to and shout out to the Asia Foundation for the fellowship. That's a great program. So many transformative people, and she's one of the amazing people that I met. She really wears a lot of different hats, from environmentalism to entrepreneurship to even like hair care and, wanting to create Black community abroad. I feel like she's definitely a great inspiration and person to interview. So really excited to have this chance. Lorena, introduce yourself to the people on the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Lorena. As Saraya mentioned, passion for, Afro-Asian solidarity, entrepreneurship, sustainability. So excited to chat more about all of that.
Yeah. Can you hear yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
You sound
I feel like I can't hear you.
I can try. Is turning off my camera help at all? Does this help with my camera off? Or is the audio still off? But I can also try one more thing. I'm gonna try. Let's see.
Yes. Is this any better with, I guess, disconnected my oh wait, no, I did not disconnect my headphones. Okay. Yeah. My headphones should be disconnected, so if it sounds any better, maybe that. Oh, well, that's weird. Did disconnecting my headphones help at all? Like, is this better?
Yeah, maybe try without the headphones.
Yeah. They're disconnected now. So this is good? This is better?
I can't hear you. I'm trying to check my audio and feel like, is my audio messed up? Select a microphone. Okay, try again.
Is this better?
Yeah, it's much better.
Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, I'll leave it like
okay, I'm gonna clip all of that. My bad, because my
no worries.
Thing up. Okay, yeah, let's just go. Okay, cool. All right, so taking it from there, Lorena, introduce yourself to the people on the podcast.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Lorena. I am an ecopreneur, passionate about sustainability, Afro-Asian solidarity. So yeah, really excited to chat about all that today. Yeah,
no, great. So we're gonna hop right into it, and we're gonna get to the meaty discussion right away. That's how I like to do things. So when I say the words climate change, environmental justice, and sustainability, what words and images come to mind for you?
Yeah, so for me, I think one person comes to mind. There's a lot of people involved in this space, but someone that's really inspiring for me is Leah Thomas. She's a sustainability advocate who coined the term intersectional environmentalism, which essentially is a concept that shares that, people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, have a role to play in sort of this battle against climate change. And again, climate change affects each and every one of us, again, no matter what our background is. So I would check her out. She's a great Instagram and website. So yeah, intersectional environmentalist.
Okay, well, that is new. Okay, so intersectional environmentalist. So It's this thing of like climate change, like you said, appealing to or mattering to everyone in spite of their background. That's really cool. Like, how do you think that climate change is segregated, or do you feel like it does have a reach in terms of like the diversity within the space? I'd love to hear some thoughts about that too.
For sure. So there's like, from, I guess, a very American perspective, there's multiple ways to look at it. So there's sort of this intersectional environmentalism or environmental justice in the United States, and there's environmental justice globally, where, oftentimes the global north is affecting a lot of this, all of these environmental issues in the global south. But for right now, I think I was focused on like intersectional environmentalism or environmental justice in the US. Through my time at Davidson College, I learned a lot about environmental justice, and even understanding how art can be used as a tool to educate people and to spread awareness of environmental justice issues in the US. But it's definitely a global issue for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with environmental justice. So I don't consider myself in that space, but I went to Penn. So I was there when we had the climate strike, and it was different. Like Penn was the place where I learned about so there's such a thing as like carbon footprint. I didn't even know those things. So it was very different, and it was a very different space. And I remember meeting environmental justice advocates who talked a lot about like needing more Black people, especially, to get involved in the space. And I'm really glad to see that you're involved in the space. You have this intersectional lens. Shout out to like Leah Thomas for coming up with this intersectional environmentalism concept, because I think that's so futuristic. Like the future of all these issues is an intersectional lens, like not just like, hey, it affects everyone, but it affects different communities in different ways. And I think we have to start talking about that. So moving back to your background, tell me about your passion for the earth and sustainability. Like, how did you get involved in this space? When did it start for you?
Yeah, I think my family always raised me around nature. I'm originally from Buffalo, so like on Lake Erie. So, there's a lot of natural scenery around us. I grew up, Buffalo has a really great park system. So, spent a lot of time outdoors. It was like a science museum down the street from my grandparents' house. So yeah, outdoors lens. But I didn't really get involved in sort of the environmental advocacy space until like high school. That's when I learned a lot about like invasive species in especially the Great Lakes region, and came up with my first startup, you could say, where I was manufacturing sustainable 3D printing filament out of an invasive species found in Lake Erie specifically. And through that, I learned a lot more about how entrepreneurship can be used as a tool to tackle different climate and environmental issues.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's a really great understanding to have as well, because I think, first of all, growing up in Buffalo, let me tell you, I grew up on the other side of New York. So I grew up in New Rochelle, New York. And I can only imagine growing up in Buffalo, like how that is. We always thought upstate was this foreign place. And this is coming from me, and I'm from Westchester. So it's always like, oh, well, upstate is like, the country town. That's where we go when we pick apples and we pick pumpkins in the fall. There's some like pretty great farmers markets up there, but I could never imagine growing up there and like how the nature probably inspired you so much. So I think that's like a common example of the fact that our environment does shape us. And I think you had this curiosity about what you were seeing up there in Buffalo, the different, agriculture and such. Cause I really do think upstate has this very distinct, I don't want to say farm taste, because I used to go farming up there a lot, but it has this distinct like agriculture and distinct environment that it's really great for botanists. Anyone who wants to study nature, it's a great place to go. And I think it is pretty much like it's kind of like an unkept gem in New York, because it's like people don't understand upstate and like what it has to offer. So thank you for shouting out upstate, especially Buffalo. Yeah. So for me, you'll talk also about your companies, like what you do. And I think like it's great that you're an entrepreneur as well. So like, how did you get into that first startup? Like, tell me about that first startup and like how the environment inspired you to found that first organization.
For sure. So it came out of this like entrepreneurial studies course I was taking at my senior year of high school. And our last project of the year involved like creating a pitch for like any business idea you had. You had like 90 seconds to pitch to your class. And then we would all vote on our top pitches, and the top 3 pitches would be pursued as a class project. So at the time, my idea was to take invasive species from the Great Lakes and reuse them as food products. So there's always this theme of like, taking something that is viewed as having no value and creating value out of it, whether it's food or what ended up being 3D printing filament. So I pitched this idea to my class, and I did not win. And what ended up happening, I think it was like an ice cream company, like a pillow company, and like a cruise line company. And I was like, they're interesting, but I just felt like they didn't really like solve any issues that society faces. And I, from the get-go, I understood that entrepreneurship is a tool that can be used to solve societal problems. And that's sort of always what I wanted to do with sort of that tool, you could say. So I ended up going up to my teacher after the voting took place, and I was like, I do not want to work on an ice cream company. Is there any way I could like pursue this separate idea? And she was like, oh, well, there's this event happening called Erie Hack, which is this hackathon event that took place in Cleveland, also on Lake Erie. And she said, you could pitch your idea there and see how it goes. And at the end of the day, I ended up winning the high school portion of that competition. And so the rest was history. I was connected with a lot of different mentors and funding to continue working on that startup. And it's all because I sort of spoke up and sort of said that, you know, this is a really interesting idea and I want to keep pursuing it.
Yeah, no, let me tell you, I clap the clap, like clapping sounds for that, because that's a common example of the fact that like one person's no is another person's yes. And to think about like the way that you looked at your environment and you had this idea to use the filaments to create a 3D printing company. Number one, like how old were you when you came up with that? Like, give me like a age?
Like 17, 18, around then.
For you at 17 and 18 to have that vision and to also be able to identify like, hey, like entrepreneurship is about solving problems. That's huge. And I feel like I'm glad that you took that bet on yourself and you said, okay, well, I have this passion, might be a bit different, but there's a space that people might be interested in. You know, there's a space where people might see my vision. And I think props to you for having the foresight to do that at 17 and 18, because I think a lot of us, once we get the no, it's over. It's like, you know, I'm not going to pursue it anymore. I just want to win. But that lets me know, like, you have the heart of a true founder because you were willing to take the rejection here and then say like, hey, I still believe in this. Even if no one else believes in it. And I have to tell you, like, the companies that make the most money are not the ones that we know about. A lot of them are like the B2B companies that do very, I don't want to say like odd things, but you know, every company's not necessarily a tech company like a Facebook or a Reddit. Like there are companies that involve using the environment, creating sustainable products, supplying sustainable products to other firms. Those companies make a lot of bank and I feel like nobody knows about them. So shout out to you for having like that different vision. When you came up with that idea, like how did people receive it? I know you talked about like the high school feeling like, they wanted like the ice cream truck and they wanted the more kid-friendly ideas, but like how did it feel to come up with that idea and like how was it received as well?
Yeah, I think the crazy thing was like it was this like click moment where whoever I told the idea to, they were like, "This is amazing! Like we need to like help you out with this." And I feel like even now, like to this point, like after my work with that startup, like I haven't experience that same feeling of like, this is it, like, this is a really good idea. I need to keep working on it. So yeah, it was really well received and everyone wanted to help out. And I think part of it was, I feel like when you're a student, especially, people are there to support you. That's why I really want to encourage like middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students, like take risks, do risky things, don't be afraid to make mistakes because you have that sort of grace and that sort of support that if you make a mistake, it's okay. And you have the funding, you have the mentors, you have the professors to support you in whatever you do. I think that was another great point there.
Yeah, no, let me tell you, like, yeah, take those risks. Because even in your early 20s, it's like you don't get the same grace for making mistakes. And I hate that because I think when we think of like the biggest companies to come out of the 21st century, they were all pretty much founded by most of them 20 somethings. Yeah. So I hate the fact that the tide has turned where it's like, oh, either you're on Forbes 30 under 30 or what you're doing doesn't matter. And I always talk about that. And I'm like, dang, our culture has, we've become very competitive. Are the 20 somethings crowd. So I appreciate you saying like, hey, you know, take a bet on yourself. Because that matters. So I want to move from the 3D printing company into the hair care. Because I remember we talked about that before. And I remember thinking, you started a hair care company. How cool is that? So like, I really like this concept of like saving the planet while doing our hair. And you probably are familiar with the fact that Black people, Black women especially, we are probably the biggest hair care consumers. Every time I go to the beauty supply store, it's packed. Okay. And that's not even like, I don't even live in New York City. So if I go to the beauty supply store in Mount Vernon, which is a part of Westchester where I live, it's packed. So I could only imagine New York City and the bigger metropolises, how lucrative the hair care business is and how so many people are looking for different options. So what made you start your last company, Forever Curly? And like, what was the intention behind that idea? What was the process of starting it as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I started it. It was like summer of 2020 and COVID had just started. And I was working in this 3D printing startup and I had reached this point where it was just really overwhelming. I was working on filing a patent and I didn't really have any like consistent team members. It was like kind of a solopreneur endeavor. So it was a lot of stress from that, a lot of stress from COVID. And I was like, I need to put a pause on this and do something for me. And I feel like, especially as a Black woman, taking care of your hair is sort of an act of wellness, it's an act of self-care. So I was thinking if there's a way for me to do that, like as a job, like that'd be great. So I had this experience when I was last abroad in Shanghai, China, that I saw a lot of people selling like sustainable hair care products, like shampoo bars, conditioner bars, things like that. But I didn't see people like me using those products, at least in that environment. And I was like, I could really learn how to make a shampoo bar, conditioner bar, and market it towards, Black women. That's pretty much it. And the funny thing was I worked very closely with the University of Buffalo. They have a really great entrepreneurship program there. And while they supported me on my 3D printing startup, they also supported me working on this hair care startup. So they supported me through that process of getting it off the ground.
No, great. I mean, wow, everything's pretty great. And the fact that you came up with that idea in Shanghai it might be pretty significant. So did you plan to like make it an international brand? What was the reach supposed to be for the company?
Yeah, so I really wanted it to be a way for Black women, or I guess women with textured hair in general, to be able to have access to their hair care products when they're traveling. The backstory for Forever Curly was that, the first time I went to China, I packed a suitcase full of just hair care products, like conditioners, shampoos, everything. So I knew that I wouldn't be able to buy it abroad. And if I could, it would be like really overpriced because, they're imports and whatnot. So I guess figured if there's a way to like make these like condensed like shampoo bars, they'll last you for like quite a few months. And it's also more sustainable. My goal was when I moved back to China, to bring that brand with me. And again, to support this sort of natural hair care community abroad.
Yeah, no, let me tell you what. Okay. So you want it to be like the Shea Moisture of abroad, but sustainable. Okay. Yeah. No, but I really do like that idea. And I don't know if you're following like what's happening right now with the natural hair care movement, but a lot of the products have a lot of different chemicals. People are getting called out left and right. So I think that sustainable vision is pretty powerful, especially even if you were to use it from the standpoint of education, because I think a lot of us are not educated about what we put in our hair. We're just, hey, it's like, it's Miel Organics, it's Shea Moisture, it's, all these other products, because we know them, we trust them, right? But we're not really thinking, okay, well, what am I putting in my hair though? So I'm looking for natural hair products that actually do not have all the chemicals that I can't understand and can't read. And I feel like that market is out there. A couple TikTokers are like really into like making their own hair products, and they're using like shea butter and oils, and people's hair is growing and flourishing. So not saying you need to make a comeback, but the space is out there. The market is out there. Just want to let you know. So, when did you decide to stop working on this company? Have you stopped working on it, or, how are you taking a break? Like what is your relationship with this company?
Yeah, I think a lot of people can maybe relate to the fact that during COVID, we were all encouraged to take a pause and like reevaluate our lives, like reevaluate our habits. And I realized that, I've been working on all these really cool passion projects of mine, but I hadn't been focusing on myself. Like I just been barreling through all these different ideas that I had. And I feel like coming from like, I don't know, like a low income family and like being supported by scholarships through like all of my schooling, I feel like people like us are like encouraged to just like go all out on all that we do and take a lot of risks, but then not pay attention to how like we're feeling and how we're doing as a person. So I realized that after doing this Forever Curly startup, I was like, I'm still stressed out. Like this was supposed to be a passion project. This was supposed to be a break from my previous startup, but I still feel really stressed. So I was like, maybe I need to take a break as an ecopreneur and just focus on me. So I decided to just, get a job. I'm a data analyst now at a media company. And it's somewhat, I would say, less stressful than a startup because, you clock in, you clock out, and you're not constantly thinking of work, which has been really nice. And it's also giving me time just to like think about me and think about, what do I want out of my life and what makes me happy. And that's been really good. And I hope to return to entrepreneurship eventually. But right now, this has been a really good time for me to take a break and really evaluate what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. First and foremost, I want to celebrate you for that self-awareness to know I'm so focused on this that I'm not focused on myself. Because I think that's something that a trap that we get into a lot. And I think going back to what I said about like the Forbes 30 under 30, like there's a lot of pressure on us. There's a lot of pressure on young people today. Like every time I talk to my boomer parents and my grandmother, she's like, oh, well, there's a lot of pressure on young people today. Cause there is, there's so much pressure to be successful in everything you do. And I think you look like you have that passion and that heart to go hard. I feel like that's the vibe I'm getting from you. Is that true? Like you go hard at what you're passionate about?
Like if I don't care about something, I'm like probably not going to put a lot of effort in it. But if I believe in what I'm doing and I'm passionate, like all out for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm sensing the drive. I know you have the drive, and I'm very similar. And it's like, where do you draw the line with yourself?
Yeah.
And there's all these conversations about Black people like us really working hard because we feel like we can't make mistakes. And I think I love the fact that you gave yourself the ability to say, hey, I'm still passionate about this. I still see myself going back to this, but I'm going to take a break and I'm going to work for someone else, get health insurance, get a paycheck. Exactly. It's rough. It's rough out here. And I could only imagine like my journey has been very tough. I think what keeps me going with this entrepreneurship is because I love this thing more than I love working in the office. And I think I'm the opposite. Like I always struggle with being, I don't know, like I never felt like I fit the 9 to 5 ever. And I did it. There were times when I did it. The school I went to, I had to do it during the summers, but I didn't really feel like it fit me. And now when I can set my own time, work on a podcast and then work on the nonprofit and then work on, like, I can do different things. I feel like I'm more engaged. And right now, yeah, I'm not like struggling 20 something entrepreneur. Like, like financially, I live on a tight budget. I'm gonna just keep it real. But I think that, I feel like I've gotten joy from this. But I totally understand the getting tired and feeling like, hey, I need to do something else. Cause I have my moments when I feel that way too. And I got to keep it real. I have my moments when I feel like I got to do something else, but I do also know it's a path you have to choose. And it's a decision, you have to make for yourself and for your health, like you have to make that. I want to like touch on something that you said that's pretty interesting. You talked about how like being from a low income family made you feel like you had to go harder. That's very interesting because, in my perspective, maybe because I went to Penn, students from like a low income background often felt like they had to do everything perfectly. So they couldn't do entrepreneurship. They had to go and get the top paying job. And oftentimes it was because like family is depending on me to use my education to get this job to open doors for them. So how were you like, in spite of like being on scholarships and that stuff, how did you still find yourself to take the risk? Because I think a lot of listeners for this podcast might be thinking, well, I'm first generation or I'm lower income and I'm on scholarships too, but I don't feel like I can take the risk. Like, what would you say to someone in that situation?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like there's two ways to be successful. Some people do really good in school and classwork doesn't necessarily stress you out too much. And maybe you want to go down the path of like academia and like be a professor, go into STEM and like become a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that. And in that case, I can see how like getting good grades and focusing on your schoolwork is important. But that's not the only path. You can get like mediocre grades, and follow your passions and become successful in other ways. I guess it sort of ties into what we'll talk about in a second about my experience with Schwartzman. Like I was not accepted to do the Schwartzman Scholars Program because of my grades. It was because I took risks and followed my passions and made impact in other ways. So I would say like, don't feel like you need to get perfect grades to be successful. You can be successful and follow your passions and just sort of get by. Like, sure, maybe you won't like for me, like I know that I probably wouldn't like get into an Ivy League like MBA program if I'm like a full ride or something like that. But that's okay. There's other ways to sort of like be successful and be happy with, again, not getting like amazing grades.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're bringing us there, right? And we're about to talk about China in a minute. Don't worry, I got those questions for you. But
Cool.
You're bringing us there when we're realizing, excuse me, my mouth. You're realizing that like there's many ways to be successful and more than one way to be successful. I was so excited. I'm like, okay, yes, you're preaching, because we need to hear that though. Like we really need to hear there's more than one way. And yes, you can benefit from being a risk taker. Like I think a lot of us feel like you can't, but you can. You know, I feel because I went to Penn, because I went to an Ivy League undergrad, very, very different environment. I think we are encouraged to be very safe, because there's this thing of like, you got into the school that's hard to get in. Don't ruin it. Don't mess up. Do everything that you're supposed to do. You have the top employers at your disposal. Use them. And I'm honestly going to say that there's a lot of benefit in that. Like there's a lot of benefit in, like you said, doing that safe path, but there's also a lot of benefit in being a leader and speaking up and doing things differently and being different, because that's what gets you noticed though. Like that's your, I don't want to say personal brand, because I've been moving past that word and that phrase that's so limiting, but that's what gets you noticed. That's what makes people say, okay, this person is someone I want to pay attention to. So it moves you from a sphere of success into impact, because they're not the same. And I think that's a great subject. We're going to come back to that, but I want to talk a little bit about China. So, because I know you talked about sportsmen, Shanghai, you have a lot of connections to, you know, Chinese language and culture. So talk to me about your connection to Chinese culture and language. What first piqued your interest in the culture and language? Like what first got you involved in that? Because I think a lot of people are like, Mandarin, it's still kind of a foreign thing to most of us. So what first piqued your interest in Chinese language and culture?
For sure. So in 5th grade, I started at a new middle school, and they started offering Mandarin classes to their students. At the time, I had no interest in studying Mandarin. My mom is sort of a businesswoman and was like, you know, if you ever want to get into business, study Mandarin will be helpful for you. So I agreed to take like 1 year of Chinese, see how it went. And for me, like, I find interest in Chinese culture and the language. For me, it's always been like the people I've been able to meet and interact with, whether it's in the classroom or like in China, that's kept me with the language and kept me studying the language and the culture. I made some of my best friends in my Mandarin class. I had the same Mandarin teacher from 5th grade to 12th grade. And I feel like those connections, like, yeah, I guess really encouraged me to keep going with the language.
Yeah, not me thinking of Ni Hao Kai Lan when I think of Mandarin, but that's literally like what I think of when I think of Mandarin. I'm like, okay, well, they have this children's show called Ni Hao Kai Lan. But I shout out to your mom for like having that vision, because that's so true. Like I would say today, like any person who knows Mandarin, you're setting yourself up well to participate in the international economy. So shout out to your mom for that vision. And I think that's great that it started young for you, like middle school. That's so cool. And I think that speaks to the fact that we do need like language education, even for younger students. We do need foreign language to be stressed. I think sometimes in America, we don't stress that. So with all of that, like, are there any parts of the culture that like particularly fascinate you? Like, I know you like the language and you stuck with it, but like, did any parts of the culture like speak to you? Was there a part of the culture that made you just like, it took your breath away, you know, like it made you really see this culture as like potentially an extension of your own, you know?
Yeah. I feel kind of bad saying this because there's so much diversity in Chinese culture. It's such a big country with many different dialects, many different types of food. But for me, what clicked was my experience in Shanghai. Shanghai has a really deep history, where since like the 19th century, it's been a very international city. So my very first experience there, I felt like I fit in immediately. It was almost like being in the cleaner, safer version of New York. Where I would hop on the subway, get off at a random stop, walk around by myself at like 1 a.m. and like not feel concerned about my safety whatsoever. And that was like an amazing experience. And then in addition, again, the people that I interacted with, I remember I met this one guy who was like a retired industrial engineer, who was a Chinese man born in Panama, went to school at Tulane in Louisiana, and moved back to China. So yeah, start own this like coffee shop. And he said, I don't own it to make any money. I do not make any money doing this at all. It's just to meet people. And I was one of the people that he met, and it was just like an amazing experience knowing that all these cultures come together in this city in China. And again, like, it's like you're in China, but it doesn't really feel like it. Like, it's like this international city that's just like really invigorating and exciting.
No, that's great. So what was it, Shanghai, the study abroad, or was that Schwartzman scholars?
That was study abroad. Yeah. Schwartzman is in Beijing, but yeah, most of my time in China was in Shanghai. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're talking about like getting off of the subway and not fearing for your safety. I'm like, where is this place? It sounds like a Utopia-ville. Like, I don't know if that exists on Earth. That's very cool. So like so you met this guy from Tulane, right? Yeah. A university who I guess made the transition from Louisiana all the way to China. So I'm thinking a lot about like, so how did you feel that sense of safety and that sense of community abroad? Because I think myself and maybe some people listening, we want to travel. We really do, but we see these videos online that are scaring us. We, especially like with regards to China, I've heard of people taking pictures of people of color, and I'm not here to like, create a divisive conversation, but how were you able to feel a sense of safety while traveling in a foreign country? How did you feel that sense of safety?
Yeah, well, I think with the photo taking, it's definitely a thing. I would say less so in Shanghai and Beijing, like in bigger cities. But if you explore like others, slightly smaller cities, you'll see that a lot more. But again, I think it's important to keep in mind it's all from a sense of like curiosity. I've never felt like unsafe or like under attack or anything like that in China. It's always been like people are just curious. I can remember one time I was on the subway and like I had dreads at the time. I could feel someone like touch my hair behind my back. But again, like you just have to take a step back and remember that it's like all from a sense of curiosity. I think for me, what's kind of funny is like I went to like a PWI since like 5th grade. And that experience, like I was already used to feeling the odd one out. So like I think being in China, it was like it's that experience but like more exciting. So I completely understand like not feeling that way, like never feeling like the odd one out, or really feeling like the odd one out, and then going to China or like another foreign country, and that could definitely be intimidating. But I think it's important to remember that it's all from a sense of curiosity. And in the media you can see that sometimes there are instances where there's like some like racial tension, but again, that happens all over the world. And I feel like my experiences in the US versus China, my experiences in China have been significantly better than instances I've had where there's like tension in the US. So, yeah, I just feel like for me, I've been happier for sure in China. And part of it is probably knowing a bit of the language. So all I can recommend is like, pick up a few phrases, like practice with locals, and like no matter what you look like, they'll be excited to know that like ni hao or xie xie or something like that.
Yeah, I know ni hao. Thank you to ni hao Kai Lan. I know ni hao. For real. Like I have to ask you because I know you did Schwartzman, and I remember there was a time where I wanted to do Schwartzman. I hate to put my business out here, but it's my podcast, so I'm gonna do it. There's a time where I wanted to do Schwartzman. I remember showing my parents. My parents are like, China? ? Like they were not okay. They were not okay with it. Articles were being sent to my phone. They were not okay with it. And then I wasn't okay with it because I'm like, okay, am I going to feel safe here? So thank you for making me know, okay, like you will feel safe. Don't let the stares or the photo taking affect you. I really love the fact that you talked about it being curiosity versus like, I don't want to say discrimination, but I think that's where we jump to, when people look at our hair and ask us about our hair, we jump to like discrimination. And I do think we should realize it's curiosity. If you're not used to a certain person and you see them, it's curiosity. And curiosity might make us uncomfortable, right? They do say curiosity killed the cat. Okay. So it might make us a little bit uncomfortable, but it's curiosity. So I really do love that. So just to like move back on the topic of your study abroad, like in the vein of this, like eat, pray, love thing that people say like, oh, this trip changed my life. Like what aspects of your identity like changed or evolved during this time? I never got to study abroad. So I'm always interested in like living vicariously through other people's study abroad experiences. So like what aspects of your identity changed or evolved during this time?
Yeah, so I think studying abroad for me was the first time that I understood my Blackness, like outside of an American lens. I think prior to studying abroad, I knew I'm Black, I'm African American, that's it. But when I was abroad, I realized that I'm a part of this greater African diaspora of people, and I never experienced that before. There were multiple events that I attended that were targeting, like, yeah, I guess the general African diaspora. I'm totally butcher the names of these organizations. I'm pretty sure they still exist, but there are at least like 2 or 3 where they're almost like think tanks or like co-working spaces where the focus was like Afro-Asian solidarity, and was inviting like anyone that wanted to attend. For the most part, the attendants were like, you know, Black people and Asians in Shanghai that wanted to learn more about each other's cultures. And yeah, that was the first time I ever experienced that. And I recognized this drive in me to continue like learning more about Afro-Asian solidarity.
Nah, like I love that, because that diasporic community is so needed. And I think like I think 2019 was the year of the return, when so many Black Americans went to Ghana, like went back to Africa. And I think the fact that you were able to get that connection, even in Asia, get that sense of diasporic connection, that's like that is a testament to the strength of the diasporic community there. So, props to them for doing that work with that, Afro-Asian solidarity, because it's needed. And I do think on both sides, there's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of stereotypes. And the only way we can overcome that is by speaking with each other, is by having these real conversations. Lord, I saw this thing and I was disappointed in China. I saw the commercial where a dark-skinned person got in the washing machine and came out white.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, have you seen that one?
Yes, I have, for sure. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh my God. I was disappointed. Yes. I'm not going to call out China. China, I love you. I was disappointed. I was like, no, what's going on? So I'm glad that like people are out there doing that work. I love that you had that connection too. Like, so my family's Caribbean. So what the Caribbean shows is that Asians and Blacks can exist in solidarity. Because at the end of the day, my family's Jamaican. They are Indian ancestors that I have, that intermarried with the African slaves. There's some people that I know that have Chinese ancestors or Asian parents. So I think that I saw the solidarity, and it can happen. And I think the Caribbean is a great like case study on that, but I'm glad that they're taking that conversation to the Asian continent and starting to have those conversations. But yes, that washing machine video had me like,
yeah,
nah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. But really, really fast, I want to bring up, I remember the craziest random experience I had in China was that I would meet friends that were Chinese, and they would just like randomly bring up like, oh, did you know that in the US that, Black women are more likely to die from like maternity related risks and illnesses? And I was like, how do y'all know this? I mean, you're right, but like, how do you know this? And it was just interesting for people to like, Chinese people to recognize like the struggles that a lot of Black people face in the US, and trying to extrapolate that maybe that's why I'm in China, because I enjoy my life more in China than the US, which is like kind of true to an extent, but it was like interesting that people knew about that there.
No, it's great. And I think you talked about something that was a very, very important point. You said that your experiences in China have been better, which me and a lot of other people are like, question marks. We're like question mark. We're the question mark emoji. We're like, huh? But you really can speak to that though, that you talked about how they're more open to learning. They're, and they're open to having the conversation. It isn't like a hush hush thing. I think because in America, the history that we have, the history of racism here really makes it tough to have those conversations. Really makes it tough. So I'm glad that you are on here, like advocating for people like, hey, if you want to travel. Like there's a Black community abroad. You're not going to deal with the same things you might deal with in some other countries. And they were open to talking with you about your identity as the Black woman. Like that one statement, like about the motherhood mortality rates. Like I've never had that conversation here. I'm in the US and it's all over social media, but do we talk to each other in real life about it? Nah, we don't. So I think it's very powerful that you were able to have that. So I want to get into like Schwartzman, but also like Davidson. So what was your path through Davidson College to Schwartzman? Because I know like when I think of Davidson College, I think of Steph Curry. I think like a lot of us are like, okay, so Steph Curry went to Davidson. I think of Steph Curry, but it seems as if Davidson was the place that like really fueled your ability to think cross-culturally and to have this vision. I know like for Schwartzman, sometimes you apply through your school. So like, what was your path from Davidson to Schwartzman? What happened at Davidson that made you say, okay, I want to shoot for Schwartzman. This is the goal that I want to accomplish. Because that's a huge goal as well.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Funnily enough, I think I initially heard of the Schwartzman program through the University of Buffalo. So I had mentioned this entrepreneurship program that I was doing there. And the head of the program, Hadar Borden, is an amazing woman. Check her out on LinkedIn. But she mentioned the program to me. And I think at the time I was like possibly in high school still, or like just started college. So I was like, okay, I know I can't apply for a few more years, but I'll keep it in the back of my head. So go to Davidson. Knowing that I want to apply for this program, and then I bring it up to like professors that I have at Davidson. They're like, yeah, definitely apply, definitely support it. And then I had a friend of mine who did the Schwartzman program the year before I did. And then I guess that sort of solidified the fact that, you know, I need to do this program because my friend is doing it and she's sharing her experience and she had a great time. I think an interesting thing, my friend, also a fellow like woman entrepreneur, where she works in sort of the ed tech space. So recognizing, and also context as well, she's from Tunisia. So again, like an international student at Davidson, so recognizing her like international background and recognizing that I also want to do more international work. I guess like Schwartzman made sense because of her background and her experience with the program. So, in summary, yeah, Davidson had a bit of a role to play in my Schwartzman experience, but I think I knew from the get-go that Schwartzman is something that I wanted to do.
Yeah, well, so it's great. University of Buffalo and your friend like made you, yeah. And I feel like you have those moments where you're like, you should apply. Like I remember the first conversation we had, you told me I should apply. And I'm like, me? Because I'm here thinking, I don't know anything about China.
Okay, yeah.
Still on the level of Ni Hao Kai Lan, Duolingo, you know, when it comes to understanding the language. But you were like me. And I'm like, okay. So what I did after that conversation, just to show you your impact and how you're bringing more people into the space, I literally put it on my vision board. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put it on my vision board. And like, it might happen for me, you know? And it's still a might because I saw that laundromat and colorism soap video. It still is a might. It still is a might. But I think I'm like, okay, I feel like you opened my mind, even in this conversation, to what can happen if I embrace a global identity. And think about going abroad and living in another country. Cause I've never done that. I've never done that. So it's new for me. So I think that's pretty great. And I love how you had that connection as well through your friend who was able to encourage you. Like it always takes that one person, you know, and it only takes that one person to just make you see yourself in a position. So I think for Schwartzman, you were that person for me. I might come back like a couple of years to this episode and be like, hey, that you introduced me to that because I had known about it, but I'm like, I never saw myself doing that, you know? So I think it's great that you're also paying it forward as well. So I want to know, like, how do you connect everything we've talked about today, like for the, like Forever Curly to the 3D printing startup to China, Shanghai, all this stuff, environmental, justice. How do you connect your experience in China to your love of entrepreneurship and the environment? Like, where does everything collide in your world? I feel like we as humans, I don't want to say we're a big meteors, like all of our thoughts are meteors waiting to collide. But I do feel like there's this collision moment where everything comes together. Mm. Have you had that moment where like the China, the entrepreneurship, the environment, the sustainability, like have you had that collision moment where everything has come together and you're like, okay, this is why I do what I do? Like, how does everything fit and collide in your world?
Yeah, I would say there's 2 organizations I need to share. It'll benefit you, your listeners. I really think people should join, but so it's NABIA. I'm going to have to remember this acronym correctly. The National Association for Black Engagement with Asia. So it's a Slack channel, a website, and their goal is essentially to support and encourage more Black people to do work in Asia. Whether it's corporate, government, whatever, like do more work in Asia. So they've been really supportive. There is like these different, you know, Slack channels. So, you know, like this is a sustainability group. So it sounds so niche, but there are other Black people doing sustainability work in Asia. And I see that and I'm like, whoa, like this is for me. Like, so that's
Okay.
And then in addition, there's the Black China Caucus. So the BIA with broad Asian continent, BCC, Black China Caucus, is China specific. And they've been having certain events where they talk about, Black people doing work in China. I was invited, I think sometime last year, to talk about my experience like in China, like on a panel with the Black China Caucus. So that was really cool. But it's in these organizations and again, like other people that are showing me that there are Black people doing this work abroad and other Black people that are passionate and again, like feel comfortable and excited to live in Asia. There's one person in particular. I'll give her a shout out, Raven Witherspoon, who I met at Schwartzman, who like introduced me to these two organizations. And I think the Black community abroad, especially in Asia and in China, is so close knit that we're all just rooting for each other and supporting each other and here to welcome other people that they want to like join and like do similar work abroad. So yeah, I think those two organizations really show me how I can bring all my interests together.
No, that's great. Okay. But yeah, I'm gonna need those links for those two organizations. And we will have the links in the episode box. But thank you so much for all of these links and information. And it's great that you were able to find like spaces that are so intersectional that they suit every part of you. Because I think a lot of us are still searching for those spaces. So it's great that we have like these new crops of organizations coming up and realizing, hey, there's a void in this space. Going back to what we talked about earlier, like entrepreneurship being designed to address problems. Like they addressed the problem. There was a void in this like Black Asian solidarity space. And now you're there, you're inviting us. Yay. Like the pie is becoming bigger. So thank you for that. So I want to end this episode talking about who you are today. And a part of the reason why I chose your title to be Earth to Entrepreneurship is because I feel like your entrepreneurship, there's an earthy quality to it where it's like wherever you are, you bring it with you. So today you are an intrapreneur, right? You work and you design like programs for your job, right? Can you go more into that?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of informal.
Okay.
Not my job title at all. But I and a group of other people at my company recognized that there was sort of this void of like lack of sustainability, I guess, at our job. So we came together and created this like climate work circle. So when I joined, I heard about it, started doing work. We have like a book club. We're working on creating a community garden to like supplement produce usage on site. Someone else in the group was able to replace like plastic to-go containers with like compostable to-go containers. So little efforts like this where it's not necessarily at like a corporate, like we don't have a formal like ESG or like corporate sustainability group, but at the time being, we're making sort of little efforts here and there that at the end of the day, like sort of make a bigger impact at our company. So again, it's been fun to find ways to be an entrepreneur at my company while I'm not currently like an ecopreneur in the classical sense of the word.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I feel like what advice would you give to someone who has like recently shut down their business and they're looking for ways to still like nurture that entrepreneurial spirit? How do you do that in your own life as well today?
Yeah, I think it's all about people. Like I consider myself to be a big introvert, so it's sometimes hard to put myself out there to talk to people. But for me, it's a lot easier to talk one-on-one than in a big group. So don't be afraid to send out a calendar invite or a Slack message or an email to people. Like go on LinkedIn, look at people's backgrounds. Like one of the first things I did at my company was look up people that had like sustainability or something somewhere in their LinkedIn bio, even if it's not necessarily part of their job at my company. So I did that. And like through those connections, I was able to join this climate work circle group and then make small impacts within that.
Ooh, hold on. Yeah.
Is it good still?
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were able to make that. You literally like the cold email, the cold call, the cold LinkedIn, the cold Slack message, and that has gotten you there. So like props to that. And like you said, like I really feel like intrapreneurship, it's a people game. You have to have people to support you. And it's a networking, I don't want to say a networking game, but it's a relationship building game. So even though you're an introvert, which a lot of us are, right? Well, not me. But I love to speak for the introverted community. Like I'm the queen of the introverts or something. But like a lot of people are. You know, you are there going and you're doing it, you're reaching out to people. And like you said, those one-on-one conversations are so manageable. I have to give you props because I have a lot of introverted friends. Goes back to this queen of the introverts thing that I have. And a lot of introverted people do not want to take a lot of risk. So I feel like that's what makes you special, that you, even though you're introverted, you push past that. And I think that's great encouragement for my introverted people listening. I know you are listening. Please take, because y'all love podcasts, please take some time to reach out to people. Do it. Even if it's like one message a day. I'm going to send one message a day. Do what you can take. I'm going to meet with one new person a week. Like, do it. Set a goal for yourself. And I think introverts sometimes have to set those social interaction goals because it doesn't come naturally. You know, you get your energy from inside. So if you're goal oriented as an introvert, many introverts are, many people are nowadays, set that goal. One meeting a week, like one Slack message a week, one LinkedIn message a week. And you'll be surprised in 1 year where your life will end up. Shonda Rhimes, whom I do think is probably an introvert because she writes these like really ornate storylines that could only come from like deep contemplation. She has this book called The Year of Yes. And literally she was afraid of saying yes, but that entire year she said yes. And if she hadn't had that whole year of yes, she wouldn't be the Shonda Rhimes with Scandal, Grey's, How to Get Away with Murder, like all these shows, Bridgerton under her belt. I mean, this woman is an icon and she had to let it out. You know, she had to say yes to things and stop overthinking. So that is my advice for my introverted friends. Say yes to things, right? Lorena says yes to things. And that's how she got to where she's at. So thank you for that tip. My last question for you before we go into our closing is, do you ever envision yourself becoming an entrepreneur again? And if so, in what industry?
Yeah, I think I would love to return to 3D printing. I'm not sure when it'll happen. I think, I'm waiting again for that click moment. I think when my initial 3D printing company came about, like it was just the perfect storm where the conditions were right and it just happened. And that moment will happen again. But right now, again, like I'm trying to focus on myself, develop better habits, like develop like, you know, a morning routine, a nighttime routine, like all the basic things before I jump into my next endeavor. But I hope that happens eventually the next like 5-10 years. We'll see.
Yeah. Set that goal. And know like everything you've done. I give people this speech all the time, but everything you've done in the space already, all those companies, even the ones that you have sunsetted, they're still within you. And I feel like as an entrepreneur, you always carry the old projects mentally. So whenever you're ready, like now you have the wisdom of having done it before, like it is in you. So whenever you're ready, I feel like there's this quote from one of my favorite books called More Than Enough by Elaine Welteroth. And she says, the universe is depending on you to be a bit braver. And whenever you're ready to answer, it will be there. So whenever your company is going to appear, it will appear. It will appear, so I think that's what I would like to say to you. But yeah, I want to play a little game before we go. And I want to know, what are your favorite things? So you're a traveler, right? You're a traveler, cosmopolitan. And I began thinking about The Sound of Music last night, literally going over these episode notes. So I started singing to myself, Julie Andrews, icon, legend, one of my favorite people in the world. She actually like sang this song. These are a few of my favorite things. And it's I feel like, was it trending on TikTok last year? I'm not sure if it was, but it's always trending. And she talks about her favorite things. So I'm like, okay, why am I thinking of The Sound of Music? But I started thinking of The Sound of Music. So I want to play Lorena's favorite things. And I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to name your favorite thing for me. I like to play a game with all my listeners. So it's about America. It's about China. It's about hair. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about everything we talked about today. Just to close out the episode with some favorites. Okay. Give us your recommendations because I feel like you have a lot of knowledge all over the world, international. So let's go. All right. What is your favorite American food?
Buffalo wings with blue cheese.
You're from Buffalo. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Shout out to Buffalo Wild Wings too. I haven't went there in a while, but Buffalo wings with blue cheese. Ooh, I love blue cheese. Yay. That's great. Okay. Favorite Chinese food?
The only Chinese food I can make good myself is mapo tofu, like the spicy tofu dish. So highly recommend. Okay. I'm here about to say PF Chang. You gotta educate me.
That's okay.
You gotta educate me because someone
good.
said PF Chang's orange chicken. Okay, so mapa do. Okay.
Yeah, mapo.
Right.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, it's a spicy tofu. Are you vegan? No, but I don't know. I feel like
Oh.
recently I've gotten more into tofu dishes. I feel like I'm inching towards being vegan. But right now, like chicken wings are still good. So
Yeah, I shouldn't have, you told me chicken wings and I asked you were vegan. My bad.
you're good.
I feel like I'm so used to people like with your profile being vegan, like world traveler vegan.
Everyone,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll probably be vegan one day, but not yet.
Okay, well, good. Take that time. Take your time. Take your time. So your favorite Chinese or Mandarin like word or saying?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say ru xiang sui su, which means my pronunciation probably is not great, but it means essentially like when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And
Oh, okay.
I don't mean that to say like don't be your authentic self when you travel. But I think it's good to like don't just do the touristy things. Like go off the beaten path a little bit. And I know in certain areas maybe you shouldn't do that, but for the most part, when you're traveling, especially in Asia, you can do that. Like as I mentioned, like I was in Shanghai and I got on the subway and got off at a random stop and just like walked around and find like a coffee shop or like a noodle place or whatever nearby. And like I think that's the most exciting way to travel is just like not really having a plan and figuring out as you go.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like, because I know in Mandarin they're characters. Do you have a favorite character as well?
Ooh. Well, so my Chinese name is Jin Lan Rui.
Okay.
And I guess those are 3 characters, but I use it favorite because it was my name given to me in 5th grade, like during my very first like Chinese class. So the first character means gold, the second means orchid, and the last means wise. So those, I guess those are my favorite characters.
Wow, we about to have to start to look up our name and Mandarin characters. Wow. And now I want to look at my name. What is my name? Okay. That's very cool. I like that. For me, I don't necessarily know it in, I don't know if you're familiar with this term. I don't know it in Mandarin, but it's fall 7 times, stand up 8. And I think it's a Confucianism principle. And I think about that all the time. I was like, well, I'm not into tattoos, but if I could get a tattoo, I would get a tattoo of fall 7 times, stand up 8. Cause I think that's a testament to what I've had to do in my life. Podcast listeners will know my story. I have an episode about my story. I've had to fall 7 times, but stand up 8. You know, that's really my story. That's my journey. So I gain a lot of strength from that. And I love like Chinese culture and their sayings, also Confucius, his sayings. Like, I think they're all very reflective. All right. You might have told me this one before, but favorite city in China?
Yeah, it's gonna have to be Shanghai. Like it's
okay.
I met someone and I'll probably bring her up later, but she was like a black skincare entrepreneur in Shanghai. And she told me once, like, Shanghai has this like unique energy about it. Like you can't really put it into words, but when you're there, like you feel it. And I've never felt that way in any other city. So definitely Shanghai.
Need to go on a trip to Shanghai. Like Shanghai is a beautiful city. I look at the pictures and I'm like, dang, Shanghai is such a beautiful city. So it has to be Shanghai. Okay. So sorry, Beijing. It's Shanghai. Okay. Favorite hangout spot in China. If we're in China, like where should we go if we want to have a good time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't want to say the Bund, but I don't know. So the Bund is Shanghai's like skyline area, like sort of like the walkway along the Huangpu River. You can walk down it for like a good couple miles, and there's a lot of nice like shops and like cafes and a beautiful skyline to look at. So if you ever travel there, it's a nice place just to walk. And even like go on YouTube and look up like, you know, Shanghai walking tour, and like you'll see it's like an out of this world experience, really.
Yeah, no. Okay. Shanghai walking tour. Okay. Now I got all these links. Okay, you gotta give me the links for that one. But that sounds pretty great. I like skyline dining and like shopping and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I was hoping you're going to say like a mall or like a center that's what it is. So cool. Very cool. Okay. Speaking of malls, favorite store in China, like where do you get yourself, whether clothes, where's your favorite store in China? Like, I love this store. It's my favorite store.
Yeah. I feel like all the malls, like, outside of the US are amazing. Not to like promote but like I love a good mall. I love just like walking through the AC, everything. But a store in particular, I would say Muji. They have really nice like stationery. They have the amazing like perfume that I would always wear. And I don't think they sell it anymore, which is really sad. But they have like candles, perfumes, like whatever you want, they have. So Muji, my favorite.
Muji, that's what's called?
Yeah, Muji, Muji.
MUJI. Okay. Like, okay. That reminds me of like when growing up, my grandmother would always give me the Sanrio stationery. I think Hello Kitty she's from Japan, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give credit to Japan. Okay. She's from Japan, but I know like Asian culture is so big in stationery. So that's very cool. And I love stationery. I think because we use Notion and all these digital tools, stationery is kind of like it might be a lost art for this generation, you know, like writing letters in beautiful envelopes. I used to love the Sanrio stationery, and my grandmother would always get them for me. So I think that's something that, I got to get back into that. I love that you chose a stationery store. All right. Favorite Asian or Chinese film?
So anything by Wong Kar-wai. He is, I believe, born in Shanghai, but he's like a Hong Kongese director. In the Mood for Love was the first watch of his, and it is so good. I guess it's the cinematography more than anything. The plot is good as well, but yeah, anything Wong Kar-wai in the Mood for Love is very good.
Okay, so is it like a subtitles movie? Like we'd have to watch with subtitles?
Yeah, it would be a subtitles thing. Okay. But it's very like almost like film noirish. I don't know. It's very good.
Oh, really great. I feel like Chinese films are so, like you talked about, the cinematography is so different. Yeah, for me, I gotta say it's Chinese American films. So from Rush Hour, which I think a lot of us were raised on, to Crazy Rich Asians, and I have yet to see Everything Everywhere All at Once. But it looks so cool. I'm like, wow, is this like superheroes with a family storyline? Whoa. So I think it's cool, but I think it's cool that you chose an actual Chinese film. So yes, we have to look that one up. All right. Favorite ecopreneur.
Ooh, okay. So I feel like this person is my favorite ecopreneur, and she also has my favorite like sustainable hair care brand, and like it's all into one. So her name is Ciara. And she owns a company called Rebundle. And essentially it's like sustainable braiding hair made out of banana fibers.
I heard of her.
Yeah, so it's a great Instagram, Rebundle. Funnily enough, I met her. She used to live in Charlotte, which is where I am now. And I like met her once in person for like a coffee chat kind of thing. But yeah, her brand is amazing. The hair care is very great. And I feel like one of the reasons why I don't like braiding my hair often, A, it takes forever. And B, I like, you take it all out and it's like, you have all this hair now. And so the cool thing with your bundle is not only can you buy like sustainable hair from them, but you can also send your like old braiding hair to them and they'll recycle it.
Oh, wow. That's
cycle kind of thing.
That's crazy.
So look them up. They're really great.
Okay. Wow. To the innovation. Okay. Wow. Because I know like this braided hair be wasteful because it goes in the trash after you take it out. So that's a great way to, thank you. That's a way that I can, and many of us who braid our hair can get back and give back to the environment. Okay. That's really cool. So you answered favorite sustainable brand, Rebundle. Favorite entrepreneur, like in general, like whose career do you look at and you're like, I want that career for myself?
Yeah, that's a great question. In general, I think I'm gonna go more of a personal route. There's this woman that I met again in Shanghai. Her name is Aja, and she had lived in China, I believe, for like almost a decade. And she decided to start her own skincare company. And I think at the time she was like the only Black person in China that like owned her own skincare company. And guess like her experience like being a Black woman, like doing skincare in China, she told these really interesting stories about how like people would ask like, oh, if I use this lotion, will it make my skin darker like yours? And like about things like, she like had issues getting a job in China as a Black woman. So the reason why she started the company was because, it was sometimes difficult for her to get a job, because of how she looked. Which is, very unfortunate. But what came out of it was this like really cool skincare brand. It's called Lalu Raw Beauty. Again, so many links that I'll send your way, but
yeah.
She doesn't live in China currently. I think she lives in Sweden. But no, she's a really awesome woman. Check out her skincare brand. But yeah, I look up to her a lot as a Black woman with a very international experience.
Well, shout out to those people that said like, can I get my skin dark like yours?
Yeah, again, the funny thing is it's like all comes from like ignorant curiosity, you could say. So again, they're not trying to be offensive, they're just curious. And as long as mindset, it's like,
I think it's a good thing, because I feel like in the American context, we don't see the worth in dark skin. So I'm like, that's why I was like, shout out to them. No, I'm not calling them out. I think it's a good thing. So I love that. I love that. So last two, favorite American song and then favorite Mandarin song.
Ooh, yeah. I don't have a favorite American song right now, but I would say anything like Rico Nasty, Flo Milli, like I like.
Ooh,
so
okay.
That,
Seated?
yes, yeah, anything like, not like, it's not trap rap, but like that kind of energy is good. And then Chinese, I would say Jay Cho. I think he's technically a Taiwanese singer. But he did a song in Mandarin called Ting Mama Ze Hua, which means listen to your mom. Again, it was my first like Chinese songs that I listened to in class. And it's just a really cute, wholesome song. The music video is really cute. And I guess it kind of reminds you of like how like my mom like encouraged me to study Mandarin. And I guess, yeah, that song reminds me of that. So it's a nice little wholesome thing. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. We have Asian singers outside of Blackpink and outside of BTS. Can you repeat his name? Can you repeat his name for the listeners?
It is J and then CHOU. Cho.
Okay. Cause I'm tired of hearing about BTS. It's like, there are other people out here. There's other people out here from Asia. And then I hear a lot about Blackpink too, which is like, I guess the female version of BTS. There are other people out here. So thank you for shouting out that artist who sounds like he makes children's and wholesome music. Okay. So we're going to end. Thank you for your time, Lorena. But one thing I like to ask every listener is, how did this conversation resonate with you and what are you taking forward?
Yeah, thank you. I would say that it's really inspiring me to, again, like recognize the importance of the people in your lives. Like, I'm so happy to have met you, Soraya, through like Lead Next, and interacting just with people and sharing our stories. And again, like keeping up these relationships, I think is so important. That's what life is all about, is just the people that you meet. And literally one of the mentors that I have that I met in Shanghai, I think I asked him something like, what's been your best experience from living here in Shanghai? Because he had lived there maybe for like the past like 5 years or so. And he was like, it's the people. The people is what makes this work enjoyable, even on like the not so great days. It's the people. So thank you for allowing me to share my story with your audience. And I look forward to keeping in touch and furthering our relationship.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Ooh, let's stop recording.
Very nice.
Hey everyone. Hey, super excited and honored that you got to listen to Lorena and share her passion for the environment. Let us know, like, how was this episode? And feel free to connect with Lorena and follow her amazing work. Her information is in the show notes and the description box. Also, I really want to thank her for sharing her passion for the environment and let you all know that you too can get involved in promoting a more intersectional and just environmental future. Please continue to follow and support activists like Lorena and others who are making sure that our planet and the fight for our planet and our climate is something that diverse people can participate in. Additionally, considering the Black and Asian solidarity, that is a movement that is burgeoning. Follow her and follow creators in the space to learn about how you can get involved in bridging the divides and helping to meld and cross cultures. Thank you, Lorena. And I'm super excited to announce that we also have a name for our podcast community, Purpose Lifers with a 3, to indicate the 3 Ps: purpose, passion, and professionalism. Thanks to professionals like Lorena, I can host this podcast and share these diverse stories. So continue to promote the podcast, share, comment, and let people know how you feel about this work. But also, welcome to the Purpose Lifers community, our body of listeners that really promote and embody this mission. I'm super grateful to be the host of this. Thank you, happy listening, and see you next time.